They said I wasn't good enough, that I was wasting my life, chasing dreams that had no meaning. But what they didn't know was that rejection is a seed. And when you bury it deep enough, it grows roots that break the stones they threw at you. This is my story. The story of how the table they set to humble me became the throne I built to rule my own world. My name is Chioma Okafor, and this is the table they set to humiliate me became my throne. Sometimes revenge doesn't scream. Sometimes it smiles. Hey family, before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Please like this video, drop a comment to share your thoughts or lessons you learned, and give your honest review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's begin the story. That night, I watched my brother's empire collapse, not with fire or noise, but with silence. He didn't even know I was the one who pulled the thread. People say revenge is sweet, but they never tell you how calm it feels, how soft the silence becomes when power finally shifts. Before that night, before the wedding that broke a dynasty, before all the whispers and phone cameras, there was only one thing that started it all, an invitation written in gold. It came to my office one Monday morning. Daniel and Amaka cordially invite you. I stared at the words like they were mocking me. My brother, Daniel Naji, marrying into the Okoye family, Lagos golden royalty. My mother had been planning this wedding like a coronation. She called it the event of the year. Funny thing, 10 years earlier, Daniel was the one who told me I would fail. He laughed when I dropped out of school to chase a dream he didn't understand. He said, "Chioma will beg us soon. Let her waste her time first." I never begged. I built. And when that golden invitation reached my desk, I smiled, because I already knew that the same family hosting that wedding was unknowingly kneeling before me in business. Life, I realized, always finds a way to serve justice, even if it takes 10 long years. I still remember that old one-room office in Suralere. It smelled of sweat, instant noodles, and quiet determination. The window barely opened, and when it rained, water leaked onto my keyboard. I used to whisper to myself, "Chioma, don't stop. Just one more line of code." I built Novatech from that room, with nothing but a borrowed laptop and faith that tomorrow would listen to me if today didn't. My family thought I was wasting time. Daniel called me the embarrassment of the Naji name. My mother prayed that I'd find direction. My father said nothing. Silence was his way of agreement. But Lagos had other plans. Lagos has a way of making dreamers bleed before it blesses them. I coded, sold, borrowed, and built quietly. And when Novatech finally took shape, I hid behind a name that nobody could trace, CN Holdings. Even Daniel, who now worked for Chief Okoye, had no clue that the tech supplier his in-laws depended on was my own creation. The day I got that wedding invitation, my assistant walked in and said, "Madam, Okoye Group sent the final contract. They want it signed before weekend." I laughed softly. The same weekend my brother would say, "I do." God has a sense of humor. The wedding was held at the Oriental Hotel, all glass, gold, and gossip. Lagos' richest walked in dressed like royalty. Cameras flashed, perfumes mixed in the air, and laughter floated like smoke. I wore a simple black gown. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. My mother saw me and smiled like she had just remembered I existed. "You actually came," she said, giving me a careful hug. "You look decent." Decent. That word again. Behind her, my father was laughing with Chief Okoye, probably discussing the same microchip deal that was about to vanish from his hands. I asked where to sit. "Oh," my mother said, her tone light. "We had to change the seating a bit. Amaka family had some important guests." "You understand?" I nodded. I always understood. I found my way to the back, near the kitchen, the smell of fried rice and suya filling the air. No name card waited for me on any table. That was when I started to feel it. The same cold fire I had felt years ago when Daniel mocked my dreams. It was back. And this time, it was ready to burn quietly. During the wedding vows, Daniel looked proud, chest out, smile wide. Every gesture rehearsed. He had finally become somebody. When Amaka said, "I do," my mother eyes glistened with joy. I watched from the last row, my heart calm like water before a storm. As they danced into the reception hall, people clapped and cheered. Photographers snapped. The band played songs about forever love. Then came the seating for the reception dinner. I searched for my name again, walking past glittering tables and laughter. Still nothing. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Looking for something? Amaka's voice was sweet, coated with the pride of a woman who believed she'd won. "My seat," I said quietly. She smiled, eyes sharp behind the makeup. "Oh, there's a table near the kitchen. The staff can set something up for you." Then she walked away, leaving behind a trail of expensive perfume and fake grace. Daniel saw the exchange, laughed, and raised his glass. "Come on, Chioma. Don't make a scene. You've always known your place." That was the moment the storm inside me stood up. Not loud, not angry, just awake. I took out my phone. My fingers didn't even tremble. "Kelechi," I said softly into the receiver. "Cancel the Okoye Group contract. All of it." There was silence, then my assistant whispered, "Madam, all 40 billion? "Yes," I said. "Every kobo." Daniel's glass slipped from his hand and shattered on the marble floor. "What are you saying?" he asked, voice rising. I turned my phone screen toward him, the Novatech logo shining bright. "The deal your in-laws were counting on," I said. "That was mine. My company." His face drained of color. "What?" "Surprise," I whispered. "Your sister owns the company that holds your future." The music faded, like the band suddenly felt the tension. Eyes turned. Whispers started. And just like that, Lagos' biggest wedding became my quiet revenge. Chief Okoye walked over, confusion in his eyes. "Daniel, what's going on?" I smiled politely. "Good afternoon, Chief. Chioma Naji, CEO of Novatech. Or maybe you know me as CN Holdings."
His face changed.
"You're CN? The one who's been buying our suppliers?" "Guilty," I said softly. Amaka's voice trembled. "You're lying." "I never needed to," I replied. My mother rushed forward, voice sharp. "Chioma, stop this madness. You're embarrassing your family." I looked at her calmly. "Embarrassing?"
"No, Mama."
"I'm just introducing myself properly." Daniel stepped closer, eyes wild. "You can't do this. Not here." "Oh, I can," I said. "You taught me that family is business, didn't you?" The hall was silent now, the air thick, and I was no longer invisible. "Chioma," my father said quietly, "please, let's not do this in front of people." "In front of people?" I repeated. "That's where you preferred to forget me, isn't it?" I turned to Chief Okoye. "Your company 3 months away from bankruptcy.
This deal was your lifeline.
Without Novatech chips, your launch dies. Investors run. Stocks crash." He blinked, sweat forming on his forehead. "That can't be." "It is," I said softly. "And your new son-in-law has been helping it happen." The crowd gasped. Amaka froze. "What does she mean?" Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. "I own the auditing firm that checks your books," I continued. "I've seen every naira Daniel stole to cover his gambling debts." Amaka's face broke. "You've been stealing from my father?" Daniel's hands shook. "Chioma, please." But I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done. Chief Okoye's voice cracked. "Security, get her out of here." I smiled faintly. "I wouldn't do that, Chief. Half your creditors now report to Novatech. One call from me, and they'll demand full repayment." The guards hesitated. They could sense it too, the shift in power. My mother grabbed my hand. "Chioma, please. Think about your brother's future." I turned to her slowly. I said. For once. Daniel fell to his knees. "Please, Chioma. We can fix this. Just tell your people to sign. We'll make you a partner." "By next week," I said, "Novatech will own Okoye Group entirely. You'll be working for me, Daniel." "Isn't that poetic?" The crowd murmured. Phones recorded. And in that moment, the world saw the invisible girl finally take her seat at the table, the one near the kitchen. The wedding ended in silence. No more music. No more laughter. I walked out as their empire cracked behind me. My car door opened. My driver asked, "Everything all right, madam?" "Perfect," I said. That night, Lagos blogs caught fire. Headlines screamed, "Scandal at Okoye Wedding. Naji heiress exposes family fraud." But I didn't read them. I was at home, barefoot, eating Ava Goin and watching the rain.
Peace has a sound.
It's quiet. And that night, I heard it for the first time. 3 months later, Okoye Group was mine. The board resigned, the shares changed hands, and Novatech logo replaced theirs on the building. Daniel disappeared from the public eye. Amaka filed for annulment. My parents stopped calling, at least for a while. Then one morning, my assistant said softly, "Madam, someone is here to see you." It was my mother. She looked smaller, older. The diamonds were gone. Her pride was gone too. She sat quietly and said, "We were wrong about you." I just looked at her, silent. Sometimes forgiveness is too small a word. Sometimes you simply let people live with what they created. I called my assistant again. "Ada, bring the package." A file. A chance. "Here." I told my mother. A program for small business owners. No shortcuts, no pity. Work for it. Tears filled her eyes. "You'd still help us?" "I'm not helping," I said. "I'm teaching." As she left, I said, "Remember that table at Daniel's wedding?" She nodded. "Best seat in the house," I said. "That's where you learn who people really are." And when she walked away, I finally understood, sometimes revenge isn't fire. It's the peace that comes when you finally sit at the table they once made you eat behind. When I became CEO of Okoye Group, people began to call me Madam Power. It sounded sweet, but it tasted bitter. Power is not peace. It is noise dressed in silence. Every morning, the boardroom filled with people who once ignored me. Now they waited for my words like school children. They smiled too much, spoke too softly. But their eyes carried old judgment hiding under new respect. Sometimes, I'd sit by the window of my corner office, watching the city breathe. Lagos moved like a restless drum, endless, hungry, beautiful. I thought I'd feel free by now, but some nights, I just felt tired. Revenge gives you closure, yes, but it also leaves a hole too quiet to fill. Daniel came to see me 2 months later. He looked smaller, like rain had washed him down to size. "Chioma," he said, voice soft. "I need your help." Those words should have satisfied me. Instead, they made me ache. He told me he'd been sleeping in a friend flat in Yaba. The world that once bowed to him now walked past him like air. "I've learned my lesson," he said. "I was proud, stupid. I hurt you. I'm sorry." I looked at him for a long time. The boy who once called me a failure was gone. In his place stood a man who finally understood hunger. I poured him water. "Daniel," I said quietly, "you don't fix betrayal with words. You fix it with time." He nodded, tears forming. And for the first time in years, I saw my brother again. Not the man he pretended to be. After he left, I sat at my kitchen table. The same one I had bought years ago when life was still a struggle. It was wooden, uneven, but strong. I ran my hand over its rough surface. This table had seen it all. The tears, the hunger, the laughter. And now the victory. Sometimes I wonder, if the kitchen table could talk, what would it say? Maybe it would whisper, "Forgive, Chioma. Not for them, but for you." Or maybe it would just stay silent like it always had. The table was my witness. It knew I hadn't truly healed, not yet. Running a company is easy. Running people is not. Every day brought new fires, debts, deals, whispers. But the biggest battle was inside me. I couldn't stop replaying that wedding in my head. The laughter, the humiliation, the revenge. Sometimes it made me smile. Other times it made me cry. Ada, my assistant, noticed one morning. "Madam," she said gently, "you've not eaten breakfast again." "I'm fine," I replied. But she didn't move. "Fine women still need food," she said. I smiled faintly. Her kindness reminded me that not Everyone wanted something from me. That afternoon, I asked her to join me for lunch. Jollof rice and peppered fish, shared over quiet laughter. It felt human again. 3 months after taking over Okoye Group, the city began to whisper again. Madam Chioma has gone soft, they said. She's hiring street vendors and small business owners. She's turning a billion-naira company into a charity. They didn't understand. I wasn't soft. I was building something they couldn't measure, dignity. I started a program for women who had been laughed at, just like I once was. Tailors, food sellers, tech girls, I gave them training, loans, and respect. When the reporters asked me why, I said, because no one gave me a seat when I needed one. My father showed up next, not to apologize, not even to talk about Daniel. He came because his friends had started avoiding him. Chioma, he said, his voice still full of command, this family name must not die. I looked at him and smiled sadly. It died long ago, Papa. You just didn't attend the burial. He sighed heavily. Do you think all this money will heal you? No, I said quietly. But it reminds me that I survived. He shook his head, stood up, and left, proud even in defeat. Some men will drown before they ever learn to swim differently. The more I built, the lonelier it became. Success is a quiet room. People stopped talking to me normally. They now said, yes, madam, to everything. Even my laughter started to sound strange, too measured, too polite. So, I began to visit the markets again. No bodyguards, no makeup, just me and the city that had once ignored me. I sat with traders, listened to their stories, and felt something warm again. Life, I realized, was never about revenge or money. It was about connection. And yet, every night, when I closed my eyes, that wedding still replayed itself, like a wound that healed on the outside but stayed red inside. One rainy night, I got a call from Amaka. Her voice was shaking. Chioma, Daniel collapsed. He's in the hospital. My heart dropped. All the anger, all the walls I built, they suddenly meant nothing. I drove there myself, rain washing my windshield like tears I didn't know I still had. When I entered his room, he looked weak, tubes, machines, silence. He smiled faintly. You came. I sat beside him. He took my hand. I know I don't deserve it, he whispered, but thank you. I couldn't speak. The storm outside was loud enough for both of us. Daniel recovered slowly, but the doctor said his stress had damaged his heart. He couldn't handle heavy work anymore. So I gave him a small position in one of my smaller branches. Quiet, simple, far from noise. He was shocked. You trust me again? He asked. Trust.
I said, no.
But I can give you a chance to earn it. He nodded, eyes wet. And that's how forgiveness begins. Not in full, but in small doses of mercy. That night, I slept better than I had in years. Months passed. Life found a rhythm again, soft, gentle, steady. Novatech grew beyond borders. The Okoye name faded into the background. And me? I found peace, not loud, not perfect, but real. Sometimes I'd sit at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and think about it all. The pain, the fall, the rise. If life were a story, maybe that table would be the main character. It saw me starve. It saw me cry. It saw me win. Now it saw me smile. Because the greatest revenge I've learned isn't making them fall. It's standing tall and still being kind, even when you have every reason not to. Peace is like smoke. It never stays where you leave it. Months after everything settled, small storms began to rise again inside Novatech. New faces joined the company. Young, ambitious, clever. But among them were snakes wearing smiles. Ada came into my office one morning with a file. Madam, she said carefully, someone leaking internal data. I looked up slowly. Who? We don't know yet. But it's coming from one of your new directors. I sighed, closed my laptop, and stared at the skyline of Lagos. The same city that built me was now whispering again. Power always attracts thieves, even quiet ones. That evening, I attended a charity dinner at Eco Hotel. Cameras flashed. People called my name like I was a politician. But my mind was somewhere else, back in that one-room office in Surelaire, when life was simple and true. As I sat down, a man approached me. He wore a confident smile, the kind that hides secrets. "Madam Chioma," he said, extending his hand. "I'm Colonel Adewale, new head of corporate strategy at Novatech." I shook his hand, pretending not to notice the arrogance behind his charm. "I know who you are," I said softly. "Welcome." He smiled wider. "It's an honor. You've built an empire, madam. But I believe we can make it even bigger." Something in his tone felt wrong. Too sure, too rehearsed. I'd seen that kind of hunger before. It doesn't build. It consumes. Over the next few weeks, small things began to shift. Decisions were made without my approval. Emails went missing. Reports changed numbers overnight. Ada grew worried. "Madam," she said one morning, "Colonel is calling private meetings with investors. He says you're too emotional to lead the next phase." I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was familiar. They always say women are too emotional when they can't control them. I told Ada, "Let him talk. Snakes always show themselves when they think no one's watching." But deep inside, I felt that cold fire again, the same one I had buried years ago. Maybe peace wasn't my portion after all. Daniel came to visit the next weekend. He looked better, calmer, softer. We sat at my kitchen table, sharing tea and roasted groundnuts. He noticed my silence. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing serious," I said. "Just people forgetting their place." He smiled. "You sound like me before I fell." I laughed quietly. "Maybe I'm becoming you."
He shook his head. "No, Chioma."
"You're stronger than that. But remember, revenge and leadership are twins that look alike. Don't mix them." His words lingered long after he left. He was right. Sometimes, in fighting to protect peace, you become the very storm you escaped from. One night, I stayed late in the office. The building was quiet, only the hum of computers and the rain tapping the windows. I opened the financial servers myself. Line by line, I traced every number, every transaction. And there it was, a hidden account in the Cayman Islands. Money was moving quietly, just small enough not to raise alarms, but steady enough to drain millions. I leaned back, whispering, "So this is your game, Colonel." He wasn't just ambitious.
He was stealing.
And he thought I wouldn't notice. But I've lived through worse. I was raised by betrayal. The next morning, I walked into the boardroom. The directors stood up like soldiers in church. Colonel smiled as usual, confident. "Good morning, everyone," I said calmly. "Please sit." I dropped a single file on the table. The sound echoed in the room. "Before we begin," I continued, "I'd like to discuss loyalty." Colonel adjusted his tie. "Of course, madam." I opened the file, turned it toward them, transactions, signatures, offshore accounts. "Does anyone know who authorized these?" The room went silent. Colonel's face changed slowly, like a mask melting under heat. "Madam, I can explain," Colonel stammered. "Of course," I said. "You're free to." He started talking fast, lies, excuses, nonsense. But I wasn't listening. I was watching the other faces in the room, the ones who looked guilty even when they said nothing. "You see," I said softly, "I built this company from pain. And I know how thieves move. They always start by calling honesty weakness." I looked at Colonel. "Your resignation letter is on your desk. Signed and ready." He froze. "You can't." "I already did," I said. "Security will escort you out." And just like that, another storm ended in silence. When I got home that night, I didn't feel victory, just emptiness. I sat at my kitchen table again, the same one that had seen my first triumph, my first tears. I placed my palm on it and whispered, "Why does peace never stay long?" The table, as always, said nothing. But in the quiet, I realized something. Maybe peace doesn't leave. Maybe it just changes shape, waiting for us to notice it again in smaller moments. The smell of rain, the sound of Ada laughing in the corridor, the sight of my brother text, "Thank you, Chioma. I'm trying." Those were peace too. The The next day, I called a meeting with all my staff, from the cleaners to the engineers. We gathered in the courtyard. I stood before them, no makeup, no heels. Some people think power means sitting at the top, I said. But true power lives in hands that work, not mouths that speak. They clapped softly. Some even smiled with tears in their eyes. I promised better pay, better respect, better listening. Not as charity, but as structure. That day, Novatech felt alive again. Not just a company, a community. Months later, as Harmattan rolled in, I sat outside watching children play across the street. Daniel's little daughter ran toward me, laughing, her cheeks dusty from the wind. "Auntie Chioma," she shouted. "Grandma said you used to be stubborn." I laughed so hard I almost cried. "Yes, my dear," I said, "but stubborn people survive." She climbed onto my lap. "Will you teach me how to build things like you?" I looked at her bright eyes, full of hunger, curiosity, and hope. "Yes," I said softly. "But first, I'll teach you how to be kind." Because kindness, I realized, is the strongest revenge of all. It rebuilds what hate tries to destroy. As the sun set, I touched my old kitchen table and smiled. The girl who once sat behind it in tears had become the woman who owned her peace. And for the first time in forever, I didn't want to fight anymore. They say after the fire, the ground remembers. Months passed since I sent Kunnel away. Novatech was stable again, stronger, cleaner, freer. But I could feel a new silence around me, the kind that comes before a new storm. That morning, I found a letter on my desk. It was handwritten, elegant. "Dear Madam Chioma, we humbly invite you to speak at the Women in Innovation Summit." I smiled faintly. A few years ago, those same people would not even let me register for their events. Now, they wanted my voice on their stage. Funny how the world bends when you stop begging for space and start taking it. The event was held at the Civic Center in Lagos, glass walls overlooking the lagoon, cameras flashing like restless stars. I stood behind the stage curtain, listening to the MC list my achievements. Founder,
CEO, investor, visionary.
big words, but I still felt like the girl from Surelair, fixing wires with her bare hands. When I stepped onto the stage, the crowd applauded. But I didn't start with numbers or pride. I told them the truth. I built my company from shame, from rejection, from sitting at a kitchen table nobody wanted me near. The room went quiet. Then a woman in the front row started clapping. And slowly, others joined. It wasn't applause for success. It was for survival. After the summit, a young girl waited for me outside. Her name was Tenny. She couldn't have been older than 21, but her eyes carried stories. "Madam Chioma," she said shyly, "I've followed your journey. I want to start my own company, but nobody believes in me." I smiled. "Then you must believe in yourself double. That's how I started." She nodded, but I saw doubt in her. I recognized it, the same doubt my brother once threw at me. "Come see me at Novatech on Monday," I told her. "Let's talk about your idea." She gasped, almost trembling. "Are you serious?" "I never joke with dreams," I said. Tenny came to my office on Monday, clutching a worn-out notebook full of sketches and ideas. She wanted to design affordable solar kits for rural areas. Her voice shook as she spoke, but her passion burned bright. I listened quietly, smiling. "Do you have a prototype?"
I asked.
She hesitated.
"No, Ma."
"I use my salary from my uncle's shop to buy parts, but..." I raised a hand gently. "Stop explaining your limits. Talk about your goals." She blinked, surprised. That was the moment I saw myself in her, a young woman building castles from dust and faith. By the end of that meeting, I told her, "We'll fund your first prototype, but only on one condition." Her eyes widened. "Anything, Ma. You'll work. No shortcuts, no pity. You'll build this like I did, from sweat." She nodded eagerly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Thank you, Ma. I won't disappoint you." After she left, Ada turned to me. "Madam, you're becoming a mentor." I chuckled softly. Maybe. Or maybe I'm just helping another woman avoid the kind of loneliness I once lived through. Weeks turned into months. Tenny worked like a woman possessed. Her first prototype, a small solar-powered lantern, lit up our lab one late evening. The entire staff gathered around her, cheering. She stood there crying, holding her little creation like a newborn. That night, I sat alone in my office, watching her joy replay in my mind. And I realized something I never understood before. Revenge burns fast, but legacy glows slowly, like a soft fire that warms the soul instead of consuming it. But just when peace started to bloom again, the past knocked on my door, literally. Ada entered my office, her face pale. "Madam," she whispered, "you have a visitor."
Who?
"Mr. Adewale." For a moment, I thought I misheard. "Colonel." She nodded slowly. He walked in, older, humbler, the arrogance stripped away like old paint. "Madam Chioma," he said quietly, "I came to apologize." We sat in silence for a long time. I watched him, wondering if this was the same man who once plotted behind my back. "I lost everything," he said. "Money, respect, even my home. I've been teaching at a small college now." I nodded slowly. "So, what brings you here?" "I wanted to thank you," he said softly. "Getting caught saved me. I was chasing greed and calling it ambition." His words hit deep. I wasn't expecting gratitude, not from him. He stood to leave. "Madam, if you ever need me again, I'll be here, even if it's to sweep the floor." I smiled faintly. "Just stay honest, Colonel. That's worth more than sweeping or speaking." Later that week, my mother came visiting again. This time, she didn't wear fancy clothes. Just a simple Ankara wrapper and her old handbag. She sat quietly at the kitchen table, the same one that had seen our war, our pride, our tears. "I saw you on TV," she said. "At the summit. You spoke beautifully." "Thank you, Mama." She looked around the house, eyes soft. "I didn't know you still kept this table." I smiled gently. "It reminds me of where I started." She nodded. "Maybe one day, it'll remind me of where I failed." I reached across the table and took her hand.
"No, Mama."
"It reminds us of how we learned." That night, after she left, I sat by the window watching the moon hang over Lagos, silent, patient, bright. I thought of everything my brother, Victoria, Colonel, Tenny, Mama. So many battles, all leading to one truth. Peace doesn't come from revenge. It comes from rebuilding what pain tried to destroy. I whispered to myself, the kitchen table is no longer a place of shame. It's my altar. And somewhere deep inside, I felt light, not the burning kind, but the soft kind that stays. The same kind that lives in forgiveness. The year the dry harmattan came early, Novatech opened a new office in Abuja. The air was sharp, and the city glittered like a coin in the sun, full of power, dust, and whispers. We had been chosen to lead a national energy project, one that could light thousands of rural homes. But big projects attract big eyes and greedy hands. At the signing ceremony, a government official leaned close to me and said quietly, "Madam, we can make this easier for you. Just show small appreciation." I smiled politely, my heart steady. "Sir, I already appreciate honesty. That's all I pay for." His smile faded. He didn't know that once upon a time, I was the girl no one respected. Now I could walk away from power and still sleep peacefully. Back in Lagos, Tenny was growing fast. Her small solar company, Lightroot, had begun to catch attention. She called one evening, her voice filled with excitement. "Madam Chioma, the governor office wants to partner with us for rural electrification." I laughed with joy. "That's wonderful news, my dear. Just remember, don't let flattery blind your eyes." She giggled. "You sound like my mother." "Then listen to me twice," I said, smiling. But later that night, as I sipped tea by the window, something in my heart felt uneasy. The same kind of silence that comes before a storm. 2 weeks later, Ada rushed into my office. Her face carried bad news. "Madam, have you seen the papers?" I shook my head. She placed a newspaper in front of me. "Young entrepreneur accused of fraud, Lightroot under investigation." My heart sank. Tenny Photo stared up at me, eyes wide, frightened and lost. I picked up the phone immediately. She answered, her voice trembling. "Madam, I swear I didn't do it. They said I forged documents. I don't even know how." "Calm down," I said softly. "Tell me everything." Sometimes, the same traps we escaped are waiting for those we mentor. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how easily the world turns on a young woman who dares to rise. By morning, I was already in motion. My legal team began digging. It didn't take long to find the truth. Someone in the governor's office had framed Tenny to cover their own corruption. I met the man behind it, a commissioner who thought power was his birthright. He smiled arrogantly when I entered his office. "Madam Chioma, you people think you can make noise and not pay tribute." I leaned forward. "Do you know what happens to people who try to bury the truth? They forget that truth is a seed. It grows again." He tried to laugh it off, but I saw fear behind his eyes. By the next week, the story flipped. The papers cleared Tenny's name and exposed the real thief. Tenny came to my house that Sunday, tears streaming down her face. "Madam, I almost gave up," she whispered. I hugged her tightly. "They tried to break you because you shine too bright. That's what they always do." She nodded, sobbing softly. Then she said something that touched me deeply. "If not for you, I'd have believed their lies about me." I smiled. "Then promise me one thing. When it's your turn, protect someone else too. Because that's how healing spreads, from one wounded woman to another, like light passing through glass." That same month, I received an unexpected email. It was from Victoria. Yes, that Victoria. She wrote, "Chioma, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but I need your help. James is very sick." My chest tightened. I hadn't heard from my brother in years. I thought I'd buried that chapter of my life. I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Send me the hospital's details." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and quiet regret. When I walked into the room, James was thinner, paler, a shadow of the proud man I once knew. He looked up weakly and smiled. "Chioma," he whispered. "You came." I nodded. "You're still my brother." Tears filled his eyes. "I've been thinking," he said, "about all the things I said to you, the way I laughed at you. I was wrong." I sat beside him, my heart both heavy and light. We talked for hours, not about business, but about childhood, about Mama's jollof, about the mango tree we used to climb. For the first time in years, we were just siblings again. A few weeks later, James passed away quietly in his sleep. Victoria called me, crying uncontrollably. "Chioma, he asked me to tell you something before he went. He said you were right. He said you won." But as I stood over his grave that evening, I realized it didn't feel like winning. It felt like closing a wound that had scarred too long. I whispered to the wind, "Rest now, brother." We both learned too late that family should heal, not compete. After the funeral, Mama stayed with me for a few days. We sat on the veranda each night, watching the city lights blink like restless stars. She held my hand. "Chioma," she said softly, "when you were small, you used to cry when your toys broke. Now I see why. You were never afraid of the breaking, only the loss." I smiled sadly. "And I kept fixing things, Mama, even when it wasn't my job to." She laughed gently. "Maybe that's your gift. You fix what the world ruins." I didn't know whether to smile or cry. One evening, I sat at my kitchen table again, the same one from all those years ago. The wood was scratched now, faded, but strong. It had seen everything: rejection, revenge, forgiveness. Tenny's photo hung on the wall. Her company had just won an award for innovation. Mama was asleep in the guest room, and the night outside was peaceful. I placed my hand on the table and whispered, "This is where everything began, and maybe where it ends." But then I smiled to myself. No, stories like mine never end. They just change hands, from one woman to another, from pain to purpose, from the kitchen table to the whole world. After James' passing, something in me shifted. I no longer craved recognition, or revenge, or even validation. What I wanted now was peace. Not the quiet kind that hides, but the bold kind that teaches others how to rest. One morning, as I walked through the office, I saw young women working, coding, designing, laughing. I realized this was the legacy I wanted to leave behind. Not a company, but a movement. So I called a meeting. "We're starting something new," I said. "A foundation for women who are building, dreaming, and fighting their way through walls." They looked at me in silence. Then Tenny smiled. "What will it be called?" I looked at her and said softly, "The kitchen table." The name spread quickly. Soon, newspapers were writing about the Kitchen Table Foundation, a safe space for women entrepreneurs across Africa. We didn't just give grants. We gave mentorship, guidance, and hope. We went into rural areas where girls still thought technology was only for men. We told them stories, my story, about how dreams can grow from rejection. One girl in Osun said, "Madam Chioma, my father said girls should only cook." I smiled at her and replied, "Then cook your dream until it feeds the world." The foundation grew faster than I imagined. We partnered with universities, NGOs, and even governments. But growth always brings shadows. One evening, Ada came into my office again, just like in the old days. "Madam," she said carefully, "I think someone inside the foundation is stealing funds." My heart sank. Not again. I reviewed the reports, and my chest tightened when I saw the name, Tenny. I refused to believe it. I called her in the next morning. She walked in confident, calm, almost too calm. "Tenny," I said softly, "they say you've been moving money into a private account." Her face didn't flinch. Instead, she sighed. "I knew this day would come. You can't build a kingdom without dirtying your hands a little." My heart broke. "Tenny, no. That's not what I taught you." She looked me straight in the eyes. "No, Madam Chioma. You taught me to survive." Her words stung like fire. I spent the night pacing my room, memories flooding back, how I had fought men like Cunnel, men like the commissioner. And now the student I raised had become the very thing I ran from. Was it my fault? Did my lessons twist in her heart? By dawn, I knew what I had to do. I called for a board meeting. When Tenny arrived, her expression was defiant. I spoke softly but firmly. "You're suspended indefinitely. The foundation cannot run on shadows." She didn't argue. She just looked at me and said, "I learned from the best." Then she walked out. And that was the first time in years I cried like the young woman I used to be. Weeks passed. The media caught wind of the scandal, of course. They wrote stories, some true, most cruel. People whispered that I was finished, that my time had passed. But I didn't answer. I had learned long ago that storms clear skies better than silence ever could. When the audit finally came, it proved that the missing funds had been returned, quietly, anonymously. I knew it was Tenny. Somewhere, she had remembered who she was. I didn't speak her name again, but I prayed for her. Because forgiveness isn't always about letting someone back in. Sometimes it's just about letting yourself move on. With the foundation restored, I stepped away from the spotlight. I moved to a quiet house by the sea in Badagry. The waves became my audience, the wind my comfort. Sometimes, Mama visited. Sometimes, Ada came with news from the city. But most days, it was just me and the ocean. I spent my mornings writing letters to the next generation of women who would carry the torch. Each letter began the same way. "Dear daughter of tomorrow, don't be afraid of rejection. It is the soil where courage grows." One afternoon, a knock came on my door. When I opened it, I froze. Tenny stood there, thinner, humbler, older. She held an envelope in her hand. "I came to say sorry," she whispered. "I thought power was freedom. I didn't know it could become another prison." I looked at her for a long time, then smiled faintly. "Sit down, my dear. There's rice on the fire." We ate together, quietly, softly. And for the first time in a long while, I felt something gentle settle in my heart again. Months later, the Kitchen Table Foundation was recognized by the African Union for its impact on women's innovation. They invited me to speak at the ceremony in Addis Ababa. When I stood on that stage, I looked at the faces in the crowd. Women, men, students, leaders. And I told them, I started this journey at a kitchen table where I wasn't wanted. Now I sit at tables across the world, but I've learned something. The most powerful tables are not made of wood or glass. They are made of stories, of courage, of forgiveness. The hall was silent. Then, a wave of applause rose like thunder. Now, as I sit here many years later, the sea breeze brushing my face, I think of everything. The laughter, the betrayal, the long nights of doubt. I reach out and touch the old wooden table beside me. Yes, I brought it with me to Betagree. Its surface is worn smooth, its edges soft. It feels like an old friend. Sometimes, I imagine young women across Africa sitting at their own tables, planning, dreaming, daring. And I whisper to them, even if they can't hear me, do not fear your pain. It can become your power.
Do not curse your kitchen table.
It may become your throne. Then I smile to myself, close my notebook, and let the ocean finish my story. Because truly, some stories are not meant to end, they are meant to echo. Thank you, my dear friends, for taking time to watch and feel this story. Your love and support mean everything. Come back for more touching African stories, more lessons, more emotions, more life. Subscribe and stay with us. God bless. Shalom.